What's going on, guys? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. The 6v6 experiment is here, live today, along with a long list of hero balance changes for the mode. Quickly, there was 2 changes that were hotfixed into the live version of the game in 5v5, so for those of you playing normal ranked, Hazard now has his ultimate cost increased by 13%, which is a pretty big nerf and is going to slow down his ability to carry the game. And speaking of carry picks, Sojourn gets a series of nerfs. Railgun's primary fire shots per second has been reduced from 16 to 15. The disruptor shot no longer generates energy, which is super important because Sojourn was holding on to Rail indefinitely with the series of buffs they had given her. That is gone now. Overclock's energy charge rate has been reduced from 120 to 100 per second. So the follow-up shots will be a little bit slower to gain full charge. Onto the 6v6 experiment now, 2-2-2. The 6v6 enjoyers will need to drop Marvel Rivals for a bit in order to give them play data to prove that the community wants this mode. It's running from today, December 17th to January 6th. Long list of changes. The base regen timer for your self-heal is increased to 7 seconds because everyone's less self-sufficient in this type of game mode. Some very important passive changes to the tank roll passive. The knockback and critical damage reduction is removed. So you'll deal full headshots and full boops. So displacing a tank line will be a much bigger deal. Look for the skill expression of characters like Wrecking Ball, Winston Primal Rage, Pharah's Boop, and Lucio to perform a lot better at manipulating the tank fight. The tank roll passive no longer affects health. An important thing to note is that in the patch notes, all of the tanks look like they're getting more health, but importantly, they're losing the tank passive that buffs their health. So they're getting improved health from the open queue version, not the 5v5 version. It's overall less health than before. And now only reduces ultimate charge generated by 25%, which is a value it's been before. But key to note that shooting tanks gives you less ult than it did in Overwatch 1. The damage roll passive has healing reduction decreased from 25 to 15, but it no longer has reduced effectiveness for tank heroes. So it's just a flat mini anti-heal. At such a low number, it's hard to even notice that, but does sort of matter against some things, I guess. Onto the tank changes now. You'll notice health being rearranged on a lot of them. D.Va surprisingly gets a lot of normal health in exchange for just losing 25 armor health. However, that's to compensate for all of her other nerfs. Defense Matrix now maximum duration is only 2 seconds. Her primary attack, Fusion Cannons, has an increased movement penalty and a wider spread. Micro Missiles cooldowns goes up a second to 8 seconds, and the booster's cooldown goes up to 4 seconds. As in this new version, D.Va will be much slower, less lethal, less maneuverable, but with the benefit to synergize with another tank, and in fact, a higher base health somehow. More values put into her skill set for maneuvering with the team and giving health to the healers to heal. We're going to notice the same theme across all the tanks pretty much. The base health goes up on Doomfist, but all of his cooldowns get nerfed. Over health gauge per target goes down to 35. Maximum temporary health goes down by 50, so it only can gain a max of 150. Seismic Slam's cooldown increased to 7.5 seconds, and Power Block's maximum duration reduced from 2.5 to just 2 seconds. And the cooldown goes up to 8. Again, Doomfist, less potent overall with his abilities, slightly more health, will need to play around his team a bit more. Hazard, importantly, does not get a health change, but I will note that in the 6v6 tests that have happened already, the tanks that are best designed for 5v5, like Hazard and Ramattra, are some of the worst performers. So I'm going to assume that's why his health remains the same, importantly having quite a lot of armor from what I recall. He does get nerfs to his cooldowns though. Jagged Wall's cooldown increased from 12 to 15 seconds, and the health goes up though from 400 to 500. His overpowered block Spike Guard goes down in duration to 3 seconds, and the recharge time increases to 6, making it last shorter when in use and have more downtime. Hazard's a type of character that probably doesn't do so well in 6v6 because you're going to have to get a big value wall off somehow. Meanwhile, the other tanks can cycle defensive cooldowns on the front line and peel for your aggression, but you could combo with a Mei to really isolate the front line, so good luck with that. Junker Queen's base health goes up as well to 425, but gets nerfed to her self-healing passive from wounds, where the scaling goes down to just 1.0, so less self-heal on all of her melees. and Commanding Shout's cooldown is increased from 12 to 15 seconds. Queen's a character in 6v6 that I bet will punish a team that doesn't work together very well. If there's something out of position, you can rush it down. And with 6 players, punishing anything out of position is just simply easier. However, on the other end of things, offering an all-in type attack where other tanks have lots of easy defenses they can just put in front of the team makes Queen, like a lot of the 5v5 tanks, a bit of a question mark. But because she also has CC, she's one of the more playable 5v5 tanks going into 6v6. And especially since 6v6 promotes more clumping up, her ultimate probably is even better as well. Mauga loses a bit of armor, losing 50 of that in exchange for 25 extra health, but nerfs otherwise. Overrun's cooldown goes up to 7 seconds and Stomp's damage is just 60. Cardiac Overdrive's allied lifesteal goes down to 30% and the cooldown goes up to 17 seconds. Cage Fight's maximum duration goes down by a second. So I'll tell you this for free. Mauga as a tank already was easily countered in 5v5, but it gets even easier the more characters that have counter abilities in a slot in the enemy team comp. It already would have been hard for him to outplay a D.Va. Now the enemy can go Sigma and D.Va, who, as we can tell, are going to lose some of their stats in various parts, but the effectiveness of counter mechanics is simply stronger in 6v6, making Mauga an even bigger liability, and I don't think there's any tank you could pair with him to make him overcome those downsides, which actually, ironically, is easier to do in 5v5 because the enemy comp can have weaknesses. Orisa's base armor has been reduced down to 250, but her health goes up to 250. Fortify, importantly, is no longer immune to critical damage, and her fusion driver now has damage fall off starting at 25 meters. Energy Javelin's cooldowns increase from 6 to 8 seconds. I can't really see Orisa being a great 6v6 tank, because it's not like she's a great 5v5 tank. She just can play keep away. I think importantly in 6v6, a lot of players are going to want to death ball, and there's certain characters where it's going to be a big mistake to do that with, and I imagine Orisa to be one of them. The one area she does get a massive buff in, though, is her Spinny Spear CCing enemy tanks, which already was too good for my liking, but with the knockback resist now removed, she can now make a sweep through the tank formation, sort of like a wrecking ball can, while also blocking projectiles. Ramattra's base health actually gets buffed to 375. Keep in mind, generalist tanks like this that are more designed for 5v5 have been struggling in 6v6 tests. That's why he's getting buffed. However, like all of the tanks, his cooldowns do get nerfed. Nemesis Form's bonus armor only goes to 200, and Void Barrier's cooldown goes up to 16 seconds. In general, all of the tanks with longer cooldowns means they have to wait on the team setup more rather than the APM spam that is 5v5 tanking. But a key thing I'm seeing with Ram here is you're likely going to have to use Nemesis Form to block more, because while all the tanks getting a little bit more normal health looks okay on paper, tanks are really easy to hit, especially these big hulking ones. Without armor, the health's going to evaporate. And something that we talked about in the transition from 6v6 to 5v5 is just how much extra damage a frontline enemy, an extra one being on the field, puts onto your tank. Since 6 players can all shoot one thing in front, and we look at this, no damage numbers were changed. So having like 100 extra health on the front line, it's not going to make you more durable. You're going to be far less durable than you're used to being, because the focus fire from the enemy goes up while your armor goes down. Reinhardt, extra health, less armor, but Ryan's one of the better 6v6 tanks because he has a big old barrier to protect himself with, and he's good at receiving cooldowns. Even better still, now that he gets the steadfast passive again, reducing knockback by 30%. Well, Ryan players, Christmas has come early. They are really wanting you to get in there and play Reinhardt in the 6v6 test. A bunch of nerfs to his offense. Charge's cooldown goes up to 10 seconds, and the steering is reduced significantly, down by 50%, which is a nerf, but it's not as bad as Overwatch 1 status because you should still be able to cancel it, and they made it more fluid overall. Surprisingly, the barrier health is increased to 2,000, which, by the way, is a value that it was in the slow version of Reinhardt before he had Steadfast. For a long time, it was 1600. 2000 is the OG Overwatch 1, Overwatch Classic barrier. That's a lot of barrier health to work with, okay? You only have one Fire Strike just like Overwatch 1, and the Earth Shatter distance doesn't quite go insane distances, only 20 meters now. Rein is certainly one of the forced 6v6 tanks, and especially when you think about these other characters with a shotgun and a shout and these other things, like this guy just stands in front and gets insane value for the team. So good luck against that, especially trying to play behind two tanks that can't block Earth Shatter. Roadhog gets a bit more health, up to 650, and some surprising changes. Chain Hook cooldown is reduced to 8 seconds, which is a little surprising because I kind of assume Hog's going to be bad in this mode. But it gets worse for Hog players because Pigpen is removed. Take a Breather gets taken off of Alt Fire, lowers the maximum heal to 325, but does get a damage reduction increase to 50% and has a flat cooldown, not resource-based. So it's on an 8-second cooldown now. So you can't min-max it and do mini blocks with it. All that's gone. Scrap Gun secondary fire air burst projectile is put back, so his medium range damage is much more effective. Then on top of it, the primary fire pellets per shot is increased to 25 projectiles. The damage goes up to 6.5, and the critical damage multiplier also goes up to 2 times. Okay, so this is where the compensation buffs are. So Hog on his position is less durable, less flexible with Take a Breather, much more punishable for being out of position. Chainhook is less forgiving at 8 seconds, but his damage is way better. So much better that he will be a tank buster again, and Whole Hog's duration reduced from 8 to 6 seconds. Sigma has a slight nerf to his base shield health. It's only 250, but Experimental Barrier's recharge rate goes up, so it comes back faster, and Accretion's damage has been reduced down to 100. So he's less offensive, but remember, because there's an added player on the enemy team, they're compensating so that you have more tanking resources to block their incoming damage. But if you remember anything from the 6v6 patches, it wasn't a landscape where all of the tank combos were seen at the same time. We always had severe patch metas, and I'm going to say Sig is probably going to be one of the more easy to counter tanks. While we have nightmares of how he was good in Overwatch 1, the patch we're looking at is not one where I think he'll succeed in, especially with Reinhardt running him over. Winston gets less armor in exchange for more base health. Barrier cooldown up a second to 13. Jump pack back to Overwatch 1 status. 6-second cooldown now, which importantly means you will need your teammates' resources to survive when you go in on a dive, expecting to be able to get out. And the leaps that you use to stage will delay you even longer in order to be able to engage properly. Tesla Cannon no longer ignores armor damage reduction, which is pretty important, I'd say, but will make his matchup against Reinhardt comps way worse. It seems they do keep his secondary fire, but it takes more ammo and more time to fully charge. Health from Primal Rage goes down to old status, only 500 now. Wrecking Ball loses the base shield health improvement he got for 5v5. Base health actually goes up a lot to 500, losing only 25 armor, but he loses those 5v5 improvements to the adaptive shields. He no longer can give them to allies. The radius on it gets pulled in a lot, down to 8 meters, and the overhealth per target goes down to only 75. Pile Driver's cooldown goes up to 10 seconds. Wrecking Ball was always one of those weird tanks where it took a long time for players to really master him. But for those ball aficionados out there, being able to displace tank lines that aren't Reinhardt can really set up a damaged or range damage based composition quite well. Zarya's base health goes up to 225, and from what I can tell, the bubbles are just returned back to Overwatch 1 status, each on their own separate cooldown, so you don't get to double bubble yourself. The bubble health is down to 200 in both cases. The duration is only 2 seconds. The cooldown on your self bubble is 10 seconds, and the cooldown on the projected barrier is 8. These changes to Zarya feel quite soft, probably because she, like Reinhardt, is one of the fan favorite off tanks and one of the key characters that people look to when they talk about overcoming a tank's weaknesses and having cooldowns to let them do their job. Players might be optimistic for what Zarya could do to help out Mauga, Doomfist, Orisa, but I think less of that will happen than you think, and it will be more about, do your tank mechanics counter the enemy's tank mechanics, just like in 5v5, but actually with less ability for the squishy characters to overcome that weakness. But we will test the mode and reassess in the coming days and weeks. There's more changes to talk about. Damage roll Ashe Bob health is increased to 1200. Cassidy's Peacekeeper Fan the Hammer secondary fire has increased to 50 per shot. Echo's Duplicate no longer has max health for the copied target, and Echo's Focusing Beam damage multiplier for low health targets goes up to 4 times, putting it to 200 DPS. I actually thought it was always that. It must have changed in Overwatch 2, and I forgot. Hanzo's Storm Bow time to fully charge each shot has reduced to 0.72 seconds. Mei's Ice Wall health goes up to 300. Soldier's Pulse Rifle goes up to 20 damage per shot again. I think this is the 10th time this has changed back and forth. Torbjorn's Deployed Turret damage goes up to 15. Tracer gets increased fall-off damage range to 12 meters, and Widowmaker's base health goes up to 225. So all these damage characters got buffed. I wonder why. It's almost like it's harder for squishy characters to compete when there's 2 tanks on the field. Onto the support category now. Ana's Biotic Rifle maximum ammo has been reduced from 15 to 12. Sleep Dart no longer has reduced duration versus tank heroes, and the cooldown goes down to 12 seconds. Biotic Grenade's cooldown also goes down to 10 seconds. A lot of times we look at these patch notes based on the meta theory crafting balance of it, but a lot of changes are based on the feel of the game. So what this says to me, since it's more likely that you're going to be heal botting more as Ana, defending yourself less, they want to reduce how much uptime you have to just heal pump with your main rifle, but also have your cooldowns ready to defend yourself or buff up your tank's life with a nade on the front line. Baptiste no longer heals double for allies under half health, but the instant heal goes up to 50, and the heal over time, over the 5-second duration, goes up to 100. So less of a quick save and more of a tank healing ability. Immortality Field's health increases to 150. Illari's Solar Rifle max damage increases from 70 to 75, and the minimum damage goes up to 25. Healing Pylon's cooldown is reduced to 12 seconds. Juno's Hyper Ring maximum duration reduced from 6 to 4.5 seconds, which is a pretty heavy nerf, probably because speeding your tanks around is quite good. Orbital Ray's maximum duration has been reduced to 8 seconds, and Pulsar Torpedo's cooldown has increased up to 12 seconds. Kiriko gets some healing buffs where the recovery time has reduced down to 0.8 seconds, and the healing per projectile goes up to 14. Remember, that's each individual projectile, and this change is because you'll be needing to heal bot your tanks more, and there's just less room to duel, especially when there's 2 tanks in the way. Remember, Kiri's damage is terrible up against shields, so Kiri definitely gets a much weaker playstyle in 6v6. Lifeweaver's Tree of Life maximum duration goes down to 12 seconds, but the health goes up to 1400. Platform's cooldown is increased to 15 seconds, but it looks like it retains that buff it got for you to be able to use it multiple times, so there's still that. Healing Blossom's maximum heal goes up to 90. Last patch note, Zenyatta's Destruction Orb ammo reduced to 20, and Harmony Orb time to wear off when not in line of sight reduced to 3 seconds like it was back in the day. Discord Orb no longer has a cooldown per target, and the time to fall off the target when not in line of sight is also 3 seconds. Snap Kick passive, the knockback is reduced by 20% and no longer does increased melee damage. Yo, how you gonna do my man Zen like that? How you gonna buff Discord Orb but nerf the kick? The kick is the coolest thing. All right, guys, let me know what you think about the 6v6 patch in the comment section down below. We certainly are going to be testing the mode and letting you know what we think in the coming days. So to make sure that you don't miss out on further content for both Overwatch and Marvel Rivals, be sure to click the subscribe button and the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.